Welcome to the Brent Spends a Bunch of Money on Toys series. I've done series on YouTube before, some more successful than others, nothing fabulously successful, although I've had a few moments here and there. I thought I would do something fun, mainly for me, so if you enjoy this, fantastic. It's just kind of icing on the cake. What I want to do, and it's nothing original, because other people have done this before, but I want to get all the Star Wars. And by all the Star Wars, I mean all the Star Wars. Nothing is more beloved in vintage toys than the original Star Wars lineup. The action figures were, well, let's be fair, pretty rudimentary in the beginning, but they certainly established themselves as the premier toy line of all time. I don't think anybody can really argue that. They came out with about 93 or so, possibly 96, depending on who you ask, action figures. Depends on how you want to define action figure. There are a few different figures that don't count typically when it comes to individual action figures. Sometimes there are different variations. Sometimes there are mistakes that happen and have to be corrected. More on that later. But my idea is, in this series, I'm going to try to collect every action figure, every vehicle, every monster, every playset. And it's gonna be expensive. However, my idea is I don't want to just pay top dollar for everything, because I think anybody with some money could do that. Plus, I don't have unlimited funds. And there's another little problem in this whole plan of mine is I actually live in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, and collecting here is different. There are not a lot of collectors here, especially of vintage, because the country is fairly new. These figures probably weren't sold here, and if they were, there weren't many back from 1978 until 1985 when this original line came out. In fact, the whole idea of collecting toys here is questionable. Some people have said, well, you're an adult, why are you collecting toys? And also, can't you afford new toys? Why are you buying old used ones? But I digress. The reason I bring this up is because you can't really go to thrift shops here. There are some, but you're not going to find toys there most likely. Certainly not vintage toys from the 70s and 80s. And there are a couple shops, like comic book shops and things, that might carry toys and action figures and things. However, not much is going to be vintage, because the stuff never was here, and if it is here now, it's been brought here by somebody like me, who's probably not going to be selling it, certainly not giving it away. So, how do I get this stuff? Well, the answer, of course, is mostly eBay. And if I do happen to go home, I am American, sometimes I do go to the US, maybe I'll try to do a little sniffing around trying to find some of these figures and things to fill in the gaps of this collection. But most of it, yeah, has to be online, almost exclusively on eBay. Now, my challenge to myself is not to pay top dollar. I at least have to try to get value for my money, at least 10, 15, 20% below the going rate. And the way you do that is you try to make offers, you try to trade, things like that. So I will do my best to make this as cheap as possible, but still complete the collection. And that is going to be very difficult, because some of this stuff is expensive. Did I mention expensive? It's expensive. Now, as you can see behind me, and you will see in front of me, I have a little bit of a head start. I started kind of my own collection. I thought, well, wait a minute, if I'm going to do this for myself, maybe I could share it with people around the world on YouTube. So here we are. Would you like to see where we are right now in this collection of nearly 100 figures and countless vehicles, monsters, and playsets? Let's go. Alright, so all of these figures that I'm about to show you, or at least a lot of them, came from this one lot that I got on eBay. Again, this is a great way to try to fill in the blanks, get some figures you don't have, maybe even some weapons to make other figures you do have complete. So this one was in fantastic shape. It's an official Star Wars mini action figure collector's case from Kenner, and all the figures that came in this case, they were complete. There were a couple of repro items which I'll show you, and I'm not going to include any repro stuff in what I do show you. This thing had the original card that came in with them. Collect them all, it says right there, so of course I have to do what it says. If Kenner says collect them all, you collect them all. And there's the front side of that card. Just so cool. Let me show you what we've got. One at a time, in excruciating detail. Here is the big bad man himself, Darth Vader, with his lightsaber. More on that lightsaber in just a second as we look at Luke Skywalker, also complete, also with a very yellow chest as I see here. I may have to try to whiten him. Look at that lightsaber. See that little tip? A lot of people get freaked out if you don't have that little tip. It falls off so easily. This one has it. Hard to find. There you go, farm boy. Han Solo with his blaster. There are a couple of different variations of this figure. One with, I guess, a big head, one with a small head. I really couldn't tell you which one this is, and I don't care about variations like that. So this is the one. This is the only one that I'm gonna have. If you care about variations, you're on the wrong channel, cowboy. Look at R2-D2. Isn't he just gorgeous? A little yellowing on that label, but that's okay. We're not mad at that. R2, and even better, he comes complete because he's got no weapon. Look at the two cloud car pilots just chilling in the back. What are you doing after work? Maybe one of my favorite figures of all time, just because look how gorgeous C-3PO is. That is a process called vac metal. It's not paint or anything. Man, and I looked it up and I kind of did some research on what it takes to vac metal something. It's a whole thing. And he just looks beautiful. I wish they did this to more figures. Not that you really need it, but yeah. C-3PO. Also probably one of my favorite figures because I got a chance to hang out with Anthony Daniels not long ago. Just sat down at a table, no cameras, no microphones, just chatted for probably 20 minutes. He's fun. He's a fun guy. If you have Tusken Raider, although back in the day they just called them sand people for some reason, you have to pose him like this. It's like a rule. You gotta have his weapon above his head. Not somebody you necessarily want on your target practice team, but an essential to have. Is that a red mark on his back? I've never noticed that. I'm gonna have to take that off. Anyway, Stormtrooper, a must-have for any collection. In fact, sometimes you should just have 10 of them. This is a Death Star or Death Squad commander. I think they started with Death Squad and decided that just sounded too, well, just too Nazi World War II, even though that's exactly what these guys are designed after, Nazi uniforms. If you didn't know, the people on the Death Star, they're the Nazis. And Darth Vader is probably Hitler, although much taller and without the little mustache. God, am I going to get demonetized for mentioning Hitler on my YouTube channel? Probably. Good thing I don't really do this for the money. I just do it for the fun. Obi-Wan Kenobi. You mean old Ben Kenobi? Yes. Also with his lightsaber without the tip. Got that crusty old vinyl cape, but it looks good in this particular situation. I wish they would have used cloth. It just would have been nicer, I think, but maybe 1977 technology for cloth wasn't there. I don't know. Nothing like playing with an old man. That's what every 7-year-old wants to do. That sounds weird. Oh, the 7-foot carpet, or was it 8 foot? Chewbacca. Looking beautiful. That's like a perfect example of this figure. Look at him. They could have made his gun a little better. It's supposed to be a crossbow. There's no crossbow. They did do it right on the 12-inch figure, but I mean, y'all, we couldn't afford that when I was a kid. 12 inches, what? This guy. They called him Walrus Man. They weren't very creative with the names on some of these guys. You don't want to know what I call them. Just look at the shape of the mouth and the color. Kind of get an idea. I didn't realize until probably my adulthood that this is actually Luke Skywalker. I just thought this was some random rebel pilot, especially because I thought that was hair peeking out, but that's not hair, that's his visor. I guess it's supposed to be his visor. This is Luke Skywalker as a rebel pilot. It's good to have lots of these because you can pretend like they're any rebel pilot, and you've got lots of vehicles that you need to put them in. Ah yes, Snaggletooth, another one of the little aliens hanging out in the cantina. Snaggletooth got a great story. When he first was produced, he was much taller and blue and didn't have giant animal feet. And there's a story behind that, which I'll get into when I get the blue Snaggletooth, which yes, I'm going to try to get one. They're so expensive. Get out of here. For a guy who's like on screen for 15 seconds. Oh, and it's another Cantina alien, although one that had much more screen time. This is Greedo. You know Greedo, if you know the Star Wars story, you know Greedo and Han Solo met. First time we meet Han Solo, he pretty much pops a cap into Greedo and murders him in cold blood. Later on, they tried to make it look like it was Greedo who shot first, but we all know the truth. And another Cantina alien. I think this is the last one. he is the king of the side eye. This is Hammerhead. His head was so long that they had to put him in the package sideways. His head had to go sideways. Not good planning, but I get it. It probably saved them a bunch of money on making new bubbles and larger cases to hold him. What a great figure. For 1977, beautiful. This is R5-D4, who didn't get a ton of screen time in the original films. However, recently in The Mandalorian, he's kind of a nice little character. If you notice, there's a white bar on the left as you're facing him in the front. There's a little tiny white bar at the top left. If you can find that white bar and it's red, you're talking thousands of dollars. It's ridiculous. That is a decal. I understand wanting to be a completist, but thousands of dollars. And there's everybody's favorite. I mean, most everybody's favorite. Of course, the only bounty hunter, Boba Fett. I mean, what can you say about Boba Fett? He's so cool. If you pick these up and you can find them in good shape, you can get an easy $50 with his gun. And the gun he carries is very common. It's like the same gun that the stormtroopers have. Most of the bad guys carry the same gun, and I mean, it's $50. I got so many Boba Fetts, and I don't know. What am I going to do with all these Boba Fetts? This is another one of those gorgeous figures similar to C-3PO that's all vac metal. The Death Star Droid. I love this one. And he's got a tendency to lose his black paint, and the vac metal comes off sometimes. Once it's off, you're just not going to get it back. Unless you want to spend a bunch of money trying to vac metal something. It's not easy. It's chemistry. It's expensive. And this figure is way too cool for the amount of screen time it got. I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember the name of this droid, and it really doesn't matter that much. All that matters is you have it. He's pretty cool. His legs are kind of clicky, but I mean, he is a cat carrier with legs. And same answer on this one. I mean, really? It's a medical droid, I think. I can't remember what it's called. Who cares? Should have been like an accessory. I see lots of people saying, this should have been an accessory. Why was it on its own card? And the answer is money. That's the answer. It's always money. I always thought this figure was cool. I don't know why people don't give Lobot more love. Although he does have those Jerry Seinfeld fancy sleeves, the puffy sleeves. Arr! Lobot, Lando Calrissian's main dude. This is the Imperial Commander. And again, you can see the influence of World War II Nazi uniforms. Pretty crazy. I mean, basically, these are just a bunch of guys. You need a few of these around so Darth Vader can force choke them out. And never once did you see them have guns. I don't know what's up with that. But I mean, I guess they figured, hey, we got to give him a gun. Got to throw a gun in there. Because who's going to buy it if it doesn't have a gun? Answer, everybody. That dumb Death Star medical droid or whatever had no gun. People bought that. This is another bounty hunter, again with like 2 seconds of screen time. As Darth Vader is getting the group together to go find Han Solo. This is Dengar. Came with this big rifle that I think the Snow Troopers also came with. Yes. These are the Ugnaughts. You would see Ugnaughts briefly in the movies, but then again recently in some of the Star Wars series. The Mandalorian, Ugnaughts got some love. Ugnaught love. Ooh, that's a movie I don't want to see. Oh, here we go. This is Luke Skywalker in his Hoth gear. I think he came with this. Yeah, he came with this really cool rifle, right? Which he's holding in a very awkward way. But I like how his head thing is kind of flowing in the breeze. Gives it kind of some action. It's unusual for these figures. Usually they're just very much straight up and down. And then we have Han Solo, also in his Hoth gear, looking very cozy. Another one of my absolute favorites is the Imperial Guard. They went above and beyond actually making this figure. I think this is a Return of the Jedi. I don't think it appeared before that, right? I could be wrong. By the way, if I'm wrong about any of this stuff, feel free to put them in the comments, because I will definitely be wrong about some things. But the Imperial Guard, man, what a cool, menacing, intimidating character, and just really well done as an action figure. This is, I forget what it's called on the card, but obviously this is C-3PO with removable limbs. I think that may have been what it was. He came with that black backpack netting. Did not come complete with the Chewbacca breaking his absolute back carrying this droid, but this is how I like to display him. And finally, wow, this is one of the final 17, and we'll talk more about that later. The final 17 is the craziest group of figures to try to collect in most of toys. In all of toy collecting, the final 17 of the Star Wars vintage figures is tough. They're super expensive, super hard. They came on a Power of the Force card because there was no movie really pushing them. It came out around 1985. There was nothing going on. It was after the movies. It was before the Droids and Ewoks cartoons. And it was the end. People were not buying these figures. In fact, at least one of them wasn't even sold in North America. It was only sold in Europe and maybe Australia. We're talking about yak face there. But this is R2-D2 with the lightsaber that comes supposedly shooting out. It's not spring-loaded. It should have been. But it just, you crank the top of the head and it comes out a little farther. It is so hard to find that lightsaber. That little green lightsaber will cost you, I'd say an arm and a leg, but arms and legs are pretty cheap these days in the black market. So there you go, that's all I have. By the way, I do have lots of figures that are fantastic, they look good, but don't have their weapons. They are not complete. Some examples are like this Princess Leia has a fantastic vintage cape. However, her gun is repro, and her gun is so hard to find. And I think she's the only one that carries this particular gun because it's just so slight and ladylike. So there's that. And then also there is my Jawa, and this is a pretty nice Jawa as well. Got his cloth cape. I don't care about getting the variant with the vinyl cape because again, it's hundreds if not thousands of dollars to find an actual one. Plus you never know if it's fake or not. Anyway, the gun that I have for this Jawa is also repro. And as far as I know, the ones that I have shown you are all authentic, and I don't want to mix repro with the stuff that I've got here. So everything you see is legit, vintage, and that's the way I want to have it. And that's it, at least so far. And I think that's about 29 figures. In this series, I will not worry about variations for the most part. I will try to get a blue snaggletooth. If you know, you know. But otherwise, when it comes to like minor variations, I just don't care. I want to complete the set, and then I can move on with my life.
Excuse me.